The Awakening. In the year 2512, the Talaxian Galactic Empire reigned supreme over the galaxy, crushing any sign of rebellion with an iron fist. On a remote, lifeless planet once known as Erebus, a Talaxian xenoanthropologist named Karos conducted research in a orbiting station, studying the remnants of the long-extinct human civilization. As Karos sifted through ancient data archives, he stumbled upon a startling discovery: logs detailing an elite human special forces unit, the Spartans, who had been placed in cryogenic stasis centuries ago before Earth's fall. Excitedly, Karos transmitted his findings to the Talaxian High Command on the Imperial throne world of Honorable. The Talaxian leadership, however, dismissed the discovery with laughter. What threat could these primitive humans pose to the most advanced empire in the galaxy? They scoffed, ordering Karos to continue his research, confident that the human popsicles would remain a frozen footnote of history. Unbeknownst to the Talaxians, Karos's archaeological surveys had triggered a hidden failsafe on Erebus. Deep beneath the planet's surface, in a shielded underground bunker, seismic tremors rocked the complex, activating an emergency power system. One by one, the cryopods opened, and 20 elite human soldiers, the last of the Spartans, emerged from centuries-long slumber. Their leader, Captain Noah Boyd, a battle-hardened veteran with 100 campaigns under his belt, was briefed by the bunker's eye on the grim reality that had befallen humanity. Centuries had passed, Earth was gone, and the galaxy was now under the rule of alien overlords, the Talaxian Empire. Despite the overwhelming odds, Boyd's mission remained the same: to protect humanity from any threat. He and his Spartan squad, genetically enhanced, psychologically conditioned, and mechanically augmented, were ready to take the fight to the Talaxian Empire. They would make the alien invaders pay for the death of Earth, and blood would flow as the tyrants fell. As the power surges on the planet below caught Karos's attention, he watched in awe as Boyd and his soldiers emerged from the bunker, armed with advanced weaponry, unlike anything the Talaxians had ever seen. Railguns, plasma rifles, exo-armor, and war drones, the pinnacle of human military might from centuries past, still ahead of current Talaxian technology in many ways. Karos realized the deadly threat the humans posed to the Talaxian Empire, and he raced to his shuttle, praying he could reach the High Command in time to warn them. For Captain Boyd and the Spartans, the war had just begun, and they didn't intend to stop until the Talaxian Empire burned. Striking back, in the abandoned Talaxian research station, the Spartans swept through the dark corridors, their boots clanging on the metal grates as they readied their railguns, their determination etched on their faces. Reaching the station's command center, Captain Boyd accessed the mainframe AI. "Give me a sitrep on the state of the galaxy now," he demanded. The AI's holographic avatar, a blue-tinged human female, materialized and delivered the grim news. The year is 2512, and the Talaxian Empire controls over 70% of known space. Humanity is scattered and enslaved across dozens of worlds, and Talaxian fleets patrol the space lanes, their technology having advanced significantly. Boyd slammed a fist on the console, his men exchanging grim looks as the odds seemed insurmountable. But the Spartan leader was not one to be deterred. Humanity's fate may have been sealed, but he and his squad were not going down without a fight. As the Spartans raided a nearby Talaxian outpost for supplies and ships, they encountered a harrowing sight. Ragged humans in chains, their eyes hollow from oppression and servitude. Boyd's face hardened with newfound purpose, and he and his men freed the slaves, ushering them to the captured ships. Back at the station, now the Resistance's temporary base, Boyd pored over star maps and intelligence files, his mind racing. The AI highlighted a key Talaxian military installation, a major fleet production center. "If we hit them there," Boyd murmured, "we could cripple their ability to reinforce the sector and buy ourselves some breathing room to build up our forces." It was a daring plan, the AI concurred, but the facility was heavily guarded. "We'll need to be quick and surgical," Boyd said, his jaw set. Get in, plant the charges, get out. It's a risk, but we have to show these Talaxian bastards that humanity isn't finished, not by a long shot. Alarms suddenly rang out through the station. The Talaxians had arrived, led by the vengeful Cryo. As the Spartans fought to repel the invaders, using guerrilla tactics to outmaneuver the numerically superior alien forces, Boyd found himself face to face with Cryo, the Talaxians' high-powered plasma rifle trained on him. Just as Cryo moved in for the kill, a Spartan tackled him, and in the ensuing melee, Boyd managed to put a burst of rounds through the skull of a Talaxian trooper. Forced to fall back, the Spartans made their way to the hangar, commandeering the Talaxian dropship and blasting out of the station. As they fled, Boyd clutched his wounded shoulder, gritting his teeth. "We'll make them pay," he vowed. "But first, we need intel." Guerrilla warfare. Aboard the Talaxian dropship, the Spartans interrogated their prisoner, a Talaxian soldier. Under the threat of violence, the alien finally revealed the coordinates of a slave labor camp and a Talaxian fleet production center. "Set course for Sigma Minor," Boyd ordered, his eyes gleaming with determination. "We're going to liberate those camps and raise us an army." The stealth shuttle slid silently through space, approaching the slave labor camp and fleet yards. Spartans, their faces grim beneath polarized faceplates, readied their weapons. At the labor camp, sirens pierced the air as the Spartans blasted through the outer walls. Humans in rags looked up in shock as their armored saviors charged in, opening fire on the guards. Miles away, Boyd and his demolition team covertly breached the perimeter of the orbital fleet base, planting charges on the vast skeletal frames of half-completed Talaxian warships. As the labor camp prisoners revolted, seizing weapons from fallen guards to join the fray, the demo charges blew, lighting up the stars as the fleet center went up in a massive conflagration of shattered metal and bodies. Watching from a distance, the bruised and bloody Boyd allowed himself a faint smile as the liberated slaves were ferried onto commandeered Talaxian transports. The human resistance had struck its first blow, but the hard fight had only just begun. Trapped in the base's bioweapons lab, Boyd faced off against the maniacal Cryo, who had activated a self-destruct sequence. "You failed, human," the Talaxian scientist shrieked, his eyes wild with madness. "If I can't have this world, no one will." As the planetoid shuddered beneath their feet, Boyd knew he had to stop Cryo, even if it cost him his life. With a deep breath, he charged into the fray, determined to end this once and for all. Desperate measures. Alarms blared on the bridge of Admiral Vek's flagship as the crew prepared for battle. Boyd burst onto the command deck, his face grim. "The hardliners are mobilizing their doomsday weapons," Vek reported, his alien features taut with tension. "We have hours at most." Boyd nodded, surveying the assembled strike force, a mix of battle-hardened human resistance fighters and Talaxian defectors. "Then we stick to the plan," he said. "Hit them hard and fast before they can react." Gesturing to the swirling vortex of the black hole displayed on the main view screen, Boyd addressed the soldiers. "We're going to slingshot around that monster, using its gravity to punch through their defenses. It's a one-way trip, so listen up." Boyd outlined the mission. His squad would neutralize the command staff and override the enemy systems, while Admiral Vek's team planted charges as a failsafe. Any questions? Silence greeted him, and Boyd nodded grimly. "Good. To your stations. We launch in 5. As the strike force filed out, Vek approached Boyd, his expression uneasy. "The gravitational stresses will be extreme. Are you certain the human members of your team can withstand it?" Boyd's fists tightened. "We'll manage. We have to." Moments later, Boyd strapped himself into the pilot's seat of the lead assault craft, the deck plates vibrating as the engines roared to life. "All units report in," he commanded, a chorus of affirmatives filling the comm channel. Taking a deep breath, Boyd pushed the craft towards the yawning maw of the black hole, his muscles straining against the increasing G-forces. Alarms screamed as the craft's structural integrity was pushed to its limits, and Boyd fought to maintain consciousness, knowing a moment's lapse would doom them all. With a final wrenching maneuver, Boyd angled the craft away from the black hole's pull, the Talaxian weapons hub looming before them. "We're in," he shouted, and the strike force poured from their vessels, immediately engaging the shocked Talaxian defenders. Boyd led his squad deeper into the station, fighting their way through twisting corridors as the sounds of battle echoed all around them. They finally reached the central control nexus, where they found the Grand Inquisitor, Tholan, hunched over a glowing control panel. "You're too late, humans," Tholan spat, his eyes blazing with fanatical hatred. As the station rocked with the force of the Spartans' charges, Boyd charged towards the Talaxian, determined to end this once and for all. The final stand. Chaos engulfed the Talaxian control room as Boyd surveyed the wreckage, the acrid smell of smoke and melted circuitry filling his nostrils. Bodies of friend and foe alike littered the scorched deck, and he turned to Admiral Vec, whose gray skin was smeared with soot and blood. "We need to regroup," Boyd said, his voice hoarse from shouting orders. "Get our wounded to medbay and salvage what intel we can from their systems." Vec nodded, already tapping commands into his wrist computer. "I signaled our ships. Extraction teams are inbound." As they worked to secure the area, a priority alert chimed on Boyd's comm. He activated the holographic display, revealing the worried face of his intelligence chief. "Captain, we've intercepted communications from High Commander Zoran," the officer reported. "He's gone completely off the deep end, talking about unleashing some kind of doomsday weapon from a place called the Dead World." Boyd's blood ran cold. He'd heard whispers of the Dead World before, a hidden planet where the Talaxians had conducted their darkest experiments. "Send me everything you have," he ordered, "and get me a secure line to Lieutenant Davis within the hour." Boyd and Vec stood before a hastily assembled war council, the holograms of their top officers flickering as Boyd laid out the situation. "Zoran is moving on the Dead World," he explained, gesturing to a star chart. "We don't know exactly what's there, but if he unleashes it, we're all dead. We need to split our forces." Turning to the hologram of Lieutenant Davis, Boyd gave his orders. "Davis, I want you to take our fastest ships and a strike team. Get to the Dead World and stop Zoran from activating whatever horror show he's found." As the council dispersed, Vec approached Boyd, his expression troubled. "You realize we're spread dangerously thin." Boyd nodded grimly. "It's a risk we have to take. The alternative is extinction." On the bridge of his assault cruiser, Lieutenant Davis steeled himself as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The Dead World loomed before them, a desolate gray orb scarred by ancient impact craters. Scans showed Zoran's forces had already gained a foothold. Davis took a deep breath, knowing the fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. "All units, prepare for landing. We're going in." The final stand. Lieutenant Davis's assault team descended towards the bleak surface of the Dead World, their shuttles kicking up clouds of dust as they landed amidst Zoran's hastily established defenses. The Talaxian commander, driven to the brink of madness, had fortified the region surrounding a towering, ominous structure, the remnants of the Talaxians' darkest experimental facility. Davis and his soldiers poured out of the shuttles, taking cover behind twisted wreckage as plasma bolts sizzled through the air. The human resistance fighters and Talaxian defectors exchanged fire with Zoran's loyalists, gradually pushing forward through the hail of enemy projectiles. Ducking behind a collapsed concrete barrier, Davis activated his comm. "Captain Boyd, we've made planetfall. The facility is heavily guarded, but we're advancing." Boyd's voice crackled through the static. "Copy that, Lieutenant. Remember, you have to stop Zoran at all costs. We're holding the line here, but time is running out." Davis nodded grimly. "Understood. We'll get it done." He turned to his squad, his face set with determination. "All right, listen up. We need to hit that facility hard and fast. Stay low, watch your fire, and don't stop until we reach the main entrance." The assault team surged forward, their weapons blazing. Talaxian defenders fell under the relentless barrage, but the human and defector forces suffered casualties as well. Davis gritted his teeth, pushing onward, until finally they'd reached the massive reinforced doors of the experimental facility. "Plant the charges," Davis ordered, his squad scrambling to affix the explosives to the unyielding metal. As the timers counted down, the lieutenant clutched his rifle, bracing for the counterattack he knew was coming. The blast ripped through the doors, showering the area with shrapnel and debris. Davis led the charge, his soldiers pouring into the facility, their boots pounding against the polished floors as they cleared room after room, fighting their way deeper into the complex. At the heart of the facility, they found Zoran, his eyes wild and his mouth twisted in a manic grin. The Talaxian commander stood before a towering, pulsing device, his hands flying across its controls. "You're too late, humans," Zoran cackled. "The dead world's secrets will be unleashed, and your wretched species will be reduced to ashes." Davis raised his weapon, but before he could pull the trigger, the entire facility shuddered with a bone-rattling tremor. Alarms blared, and warning lights flashed as the device began to hum with an ominous power. "Fall back," Davis shouted, his squad scrambling for cover as the device erupted in a blinding flash of energy. The lieutenant felt himself lifted off his feet, hurtled through the air by the shockwave, and then everything went black. On the bridge of Boyd's flagship, the grim-faced captain watched the view screen, his jaw clenched tight. "Lieutenant Davis, come in." "Davis, do you copy?" Silence. Boyd turned to Admiral Vec, his eyes burning with a mixture of fury and despair. "Mobilize every ship we have. We're going in." The Talaxian admiral nodded solemnly. "It will be done, Captain. For humanity." As the human Talaxian armada pushed towards the dead world, Boyd steeled himself for the confrontation to come. They had come too far, suffered too much, to let humanity's last stand end in failure. Whatever horrors Zoran had unleashed, they would face them head-on, united in their determination to reclaim their rightful place in the galaxy. The final battle for the fate of humanity was about to begin. The human Talaxian armada surged towards the dead world, their ships cutting through the inky blackness of space, their weapons primed and ready. On the bridge of his flagship, Captain Boyd watched the view screen intently, his jaw set with grim determination. As they approached the planet's orbit, the scale of Zoran's defenses became clear. Rings of automated defense platforms and squadrons of Talaxian fighters formed a formidable barrier, their weapons trained on the incoming vessels. Boyd turned to Admiral Vec, who stood at his side, expression unreadable. "We're outnumbered and outgunned, but we have no choice. All ships, engage the enemy and punch through to the surface." The battle erupted in a blaze of energy, turbolaser fire and missile streaks crisscrossing the void as the two fleets clashed. Boyd gripped the arms of his command chair, his knuckles turning white, as he barked orders to his crew. "Target the defense platforms first, then focus on breaking through their fighter screen. We need to get boots on the ground as soon as possible." The human and Talaxian vessels fought with a desperate tenacity, their crews knowing that the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Slowly, painfully, they began to carve a path through the enemy's defenses, their ships taking heavy damage in the process. Finally, Boyd watched as the last of the defense platforms was destroyed, clearing the way for the assault shuttles to make their descent. "All ground teams, this is Captain Boyd. You are cleared for insertion. Good luck, and may the stars be with you." The shuttles plummeted towards the dead world's surface, their occupants bracing for a perilous landing. As they touched down amidst the rubble and twisted metal, the soldiers poured out, weapons at the ready, their eyes scanning the desolate landscape for any sign of the enemy. Leading the charge was a grim-faced Lieutenant Davis, his uniform singed and his face streaked with soot. but the fire in his eyes was undiminished. "All units, move out. We need to reach that facility and stop Zoran before it's too late." The human and Talaxian forces surged forward, their boots crunching on the broken ground as they fought their way towards the towering structure that housed the Doomsday device. Zoran's loyalists met them with a hail of plasma fire, their fanaticism fueling their ferocity, but the determined invaders refused to be deterred. Davis and his squad pushed deeper into the facility, engaging in brutal close-quarters combat as they fought to reach the central control room. The sounds of battle echoed through the halls, punctuated by the anguished cries of the wounded and the dying. At last, they burst into the control room, and there stood Zoran, his eyes wild and his hands dancing across the device's controls. "You fools," he shrieked. "You've come too late. The dead world's secrets will be revealed, and your precious humanity will be wiped from existence." Davis raised his weapon, his finger tightening on the trigger, but before he could fire, the facility shuddered with a violent tremor. The device began to hum with an ominous power, its energy levels spiking as Zoran laughed maniacally. In that moment, Davis knew they had failed. The Doomsday weapon was about to be unleashed, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. As the facility collapsed around them, he made one final, desperate decision. Davis raised his weapon, his finger tightening on the trigger, but before he could fire, the facility shuddered with a violent tremor. The device began to hum with an ominous power, its energy levels spiking as Zoran laughed maniacally. In that moment, Davis knew they had failed. The Doomsday weapon was about to be unleashed, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. As the facility collapsed around them, he made one final, desperate decision. "All units, fall back. Get to the shuttles now," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the deafening roar of the device's activation. "This is Lieutenant Davis to Captain Boyd. The mission is a failure. Evacuate. Repeat, evacuate." Boyd's face crumpled with anguish as he heard Davis's words, but he knew there was no time to waste. "All ships, pull back. Get as many of our people out of there as you can." The human and Talaxian vessels turned and fled, their engines straining as they raced to escape the doomed planet. But even as they broke through the atmosphere, a blinding light flashed across the void, and a shockwave of unimaginable power swept through the fleet, tearing ships apart like fragile toys. In the end, the cost of humanity's struggle had been unimaginably high, but as the battered survivors regrouped, their eyes burning with a newfound determination, they knew that the war was far from over. The Talaxian Empire had struck a devastating blow, but humanity's spirit could not be broken. They would regroup, they would rebuild, and they would rise again, stronger and more resolute than ever before. The fight for the galaxy's future was just beginning.